Get down on it. Get down on it. Really want it. Get down on it. Get down on it. Get your back up off the wall. Dance. Come on. Get your back up off the wall. Dance. Come on. Get down on it. Get down on it. Get down on it. Get down on it.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. Salvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
One thing before I get off this. The motherfucker who said we're going to keep this thing going until people start losing their houses and their apartments. Listen to me, motherfucker. There's a lot of ways to lose your house. Some of it is financial, some of it is karma, and some of it is just figuring out who the fuck said that. And we know who said that, and where he fucking lives. There's a lot of ways to lose your house. You wish that on people. You wish that families starve while you're making $27 fucking million a year for creating nothing. Be careful, motherfucker. Be really careful. Because that's the kind of shit that stirs shit up. Peace out.
Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can find me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can find me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. That was actor Ron Perlman. You may know him as Hellboy, as Saul so graciously pointed out. He is being very vocal there in reference to the writer's strike and the actors going on strike. And that statement that was made by someone in Hollywood who said the goal was basically to make it so that the writers, I guess, continue to fight until they lose their homes. So I guess Ron Perlman in real life is Hellboy. He really does embody his characters in real life. Ron is not happy, and I don't blame him. If you haven't had a chance, check out the stream JB and I did yesterday in reference to the writer's strike and the SAG strike. Really big news happening there, and this is actually a huge moment in the entertainment industry. So, yeah, shout out to Ron, keeping it reals. All right. I want to give kudos to people in the chat, and then we'll go to patrons and we'll jump right in. What's going on? Joe says UFO files, or does the MIC want to excuse the militarized space to maintain its hegemony at the cost of trillions of dollars? Curiouser and curiouser. We're going to get into that UFA story. I always get excited when I get to talk about UFOs. It's like, woo, you know, gives me Twilight phone vibes. Shout out to CBC Voter, says happy Friday, Sabby Sabs. What's going on? Hannah G says, what Oprah do? We'll get into that. We got a lot to say about Oprah. Shout out to Gup, says excellent RBN show today, Sabby. Thanks for showing the truth about the DNC. Thank you so much. Greetings, Robin says starting the weekend with Sabby Sabs and fam. Let's do this. What's going on? Notori says I freaking love you, Sab. I freaking love you too, Notori. Sup? What's going on? Whoever says what's up, comrades. Shout out to Lorez, says hi, Sabrina, Eric, and Sabby fam. Smash the like. Oh, what did Oprah do? Haha. Oh, that Oprah story is Oh boy. What's going on? Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says, I'm here just in time. Doobie doobie doo. Shout out to Sean, says, you're. Greetings, Eric, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, yo, Friday peeps. What's going on? Pachico, who's a Sabby member, says, yay, Sabby. What's going on? Oz says hello to Eric. Shout out to Ben, who's a Sabby member, says, smoking a doobie doobie doo. Greetings, Rupert, says, Zelensky went to the NATO summit to fix the boiler. Greetings, Mark, says, Sabby, what's Oprah's problem? We're going to get into all of it. Oh, man. What's going on? Dr. Nick says, get down on it. Get down on it. Yes. I was listening to Kool and the Gang earlier today. Probably one of my favorite, like, older, R&B groups. My parents loved Kool and the Gang. So, like, I know, like, most of their songs and stuff. But I was listening to that Get Down on It. Get Down on It. I was listening to that song earlier today. Love it. Shout out to V, sending music vibes. Greetings, Natalie, who's a Sabby member, says, good evening, Star Shines. Shout out to ACAB, says, hello, everyone. What's going on? Randy says, good way to warm evening, Sabby peeps. Shout out to Leora. Leora says, howdy. Greetings, Rick says, hey, y'all. Shout out to Off the Rails, says, hey, Rick. Rick, you are popular tonight. Shout out to Saul, says, Hellboy is pissed. I know. Every time I see that guy's face, that's all I see is Hellboy. So it's like, yeah, that's what I think a lot of people know him as. Shout out to Steven, says, corporate Dems are bashing the hell out of West. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I told you this is what Bernie wanted to avoid. See, this is why Bernie didn't want to, you see what I mean? Bernie still wanted to be cool with the party. Shout out to Kurt, says, well done, Ronnie. And shout out to Roger Meadows for the super chat. How does a youngin' like you know about Kool and the Gang? My parents, man, my folks. My parents listen to good music. Yeah, man. Shout out to Eric, says, Sons of Anarchy coming with vengeance. Shout out to Desert Mantis. Who is today's presidential candidate, Sabby? We'll get into all of that. We'll get into all. Chat is very vocal tonight. And shout out to Charlie Mack, who's a Sabby member, says, hey, fam. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. I want to start off with giving a shout out to those of you who are Sabby patrons. You're out here doing the damn thing, and I really do appreciate that. So we always want to shout out patrons. Thank you so much for being a Sabby patron. If you're interested in becoming a patron, I have 5 categories: ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters. There's also those Sabbies, and of course, members. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the screen on the bottom of the ticker there. And I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Dooley. Dooley, dooley, do. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Let's go ahead and get into that thumbnail. I can't wait to get into these stories tonight. I'm excited about it. Excited. Anticipation is making me wait. All right, tonight we are discussing Cornell West Black voters. The Democratic Party and the mainstream media DNC shills are getting a little nervous, and I wonder why. We're also going to discuss Biden's sneaky message, and you'll notice there's Zelensky there with him. We're going to get into Biden's visit and that NATO summit that happened, his conversation with Zelensky, but also something else that was happening behind the scenes while people weren't paying attention. And this announcement came out yesterday. We're also going to discuss Oprah Winfrey concern. What is going on? Jesus. What is happening with Oprah? Is it her? Is it the company that she keeps? We're going to get into that. And we're also going to discuss, for all you UFO enthusiasts out there, UFO release. This is breaking huge news. I hope more people talk about this because we're going to get into those UFO files update. Dun, 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 dun. All right. let's go ahead and get started. You guys are funny. Danny said, what did Stedman do? Oh, man. Okay, let's get started with this story about Joe Biden and Zelensky in reference to this NATO summit and something that was announced yesterday, which I thought was in a kind of sneaky way, because they knew that more people and mainstream media would be focused on this NATO summit, right? That was the big news for the most part. Well, he did have a discussion with Zelensky at this summit. As you can imagine, Zelensky is trying to make it so that Ukraine will be a part of NATO. Right now, the answer to that has been no so far. But let's hear how this discussion went. And I have a couple of things I want to add in between.
I hope we finally have put to bed the notion about whether or not Ukraine is welcome in NATO. It's going to happen. You're all moving in the right direction. I think it's just a matter of getting by the next few months here. So thank you. And, it's hard to believe 500 days. It's easy for me. Just mostly I've been in and out of Ukraine a lot before the war and some since the war. But I'm going to say again what I've said to you many times. Not only all of you, but your people, your sons, your daughters, your husbands, your wives, your friends. You're incredible. Ukraine, the whole world's seeing the courage. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. The courage and commitment for the average Ukrainian. When you see a 65-year-old woman on television after her apartment's been bombed out, picking up the pieces and going to help next door neighbor. I mean, it's just astounding.
You know, it's easy to have courage when you have billions of dollars and ammunition coming your way constantly. It's a lot easier to have that courage. You know, I imagine he would not say the same thing for people in Yemen and people in Somalia who are not getting that support from the U.S. government. Instead, the U.S. government is pretending like Yemen didn't even happen. There have been some politicians to push towards, ending the humanitarian crisis that has been caused. Let's be real, that has been caused by the weapons that the U.S. government gave to Saudi Arabia. But no, he's not going to mention that.
You're setting an example for the whole world of what constitutes genuine courage. I mean, from the bottom of my heart, I mean that. What courage means. And, I think it's your resilience and your resolve has been a model for the whole world to see. And the frustration, I can only imagine. I know you're many times frustrated about when things get to you quickly enough and what's getting to you and how we're getting there. But I promise you, the United States is doing everything we can to get you what you need as rapidly as we can get it to you.
The United States government is doing everything that they can to get you what you need as rapidly as they can get it to you. That's Biden speaking to Zelensky there. It's interesting the way that they can respond with such a sense of urgency when it's another country, but they can't respond, to the American people with that same rhetoric or behavior. Because when it comes to us, they tell us we don't have the funds for it. They have the money. Or they say that, no, we can't talk about that right now. Think about this for a second. It's not just weapons that have been sent to Ukraine. When we talked about those packages a couple of months ago, and one of those packages included healthcare. But they can't even give all of you healthcare. The sense of urgency doesn't apply to the American people because our politicians belong to corporations in the military industrial complex. So the sense of urgency doesn't apply to us. We haven't hit full rock bottom yet in the United States. Times are tough. And we've seen tough times before during the '08 housing crisis. Times are tough. They're hard. They're difficult for people. But we haven't hit rock bottom yet. And I think the true test is going to be when we get to a point economically where people do hit rock bottom in this country, and people will see our government for what it really is, just another corporation in a White House. And
the Secretary of Defense has been a constant, how can I say it, refrain from the Defense Department, everywhere else, and calling other secretaries of defense around the world to say, let's get some help. So I just want you to know it's real. And, here in Vilnius, we held the first, as you well know, NATO-Ukraine Council. But you and I talked about this beforehand, about the commitments, the security commitments we were going to make while it becomes official, until it becomes official. And I think that's important. And I want to tell you, when I got here, Mr. President, and I started to sell that idea to other heads of state, there was no reluctance. There was no, oh, I don't want to.
Did you hear what he just said? That he sold the idea to other heads of state. Again, this just points out that oftentimes it is the U.S. government that is the driving force here in reference to foreign policy. He sold the idea. He says there was no hesitation, because a lot of times these other leaders do not push back on the U.S. government, especially if they're considered to be one of our allies.
Everybody just said, okay, and sign on. So it's real. You've done an enormous job. You have a lot more to do, I know, and I just think that, we're going to make sure that you get what you need. And I look forward to the day when we're having the meeting celebrating your official membership in NATO.
Let's be real here. So they're talking about the official membership in NATO. This is a disaster. This is an absolute mess. You will never hear him say those words to the American people. I look forward to giving you what you need. When do they tell us that? Never. No, it's just optics and what we can try to do, or we can't do it because of this party and that party. Think about that for a second.
So thank you for what you're doing. And the bad news for you is we're not going anywhere. You're stuck with us. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I will start. You said about 500 days is really a difficult job for our people, soldiers and civilians, mothers, fathers, and children, really to fight for their life, and for these values. And thank you very much that all these days you are with us. I mean, you and Americans, all of Americans and Congress. I mean, thank you, Mr. President, that you, like we say, shoulder to shoulder with us from first days of full-scale war. We appreciate for this very much, and really, we understand your leading support, because when you give such messages and when you gave sometimes some weapon, I'm sorry that, but I want to say to journalists, like I said during our meeting, our council, that it's very simple, to criticize, for example, clusters ammunition, which you made difficult political decision, but you have to know that Russia used such weapon from the first days, not only full-scale war, from first days of occupation of Crimea from 2014 and 15.
So two wrongs make a right? So because Russia used that in the past, so it's okay to use it now?
All our territories in Donbass, they used it. And now they continue doing, and that you gave us, this decision will help us to save us. And that's why my appreciation for this. And I didn't hear from all the, parts of the world when Russia began to use it. I didn't hear that some of, countries criticized Russia. But I think
that is incorrect. Russia was criticized for using cluster ammunitions. In fact, I played the videos for that for you on this channel. I played the videos where Jen Psaki, who was the press secretary at that time, said that is considered to be a war crime. They were criticized for doing that. What does he know? What is he talking about? Now, I can't speak for European journalists, but American journalists did criticize Russia for doing that. So he's upset because some of the journalists have criticized him and Joe Biden for making that decision and choosing to use that. For those who are not aware, cluster bombs are dangerous because it doesn't hit or focus on a specific target. So it can like spread basically, which means that it is more likely to harm civilians and more civilians than other types of ammunition that has already been sent or given to them. So there is nothing to applaud in reference to this. So yes, some of the politicians like Barbara Lee spoke out against this. Other journalists have spoken out against it because when Russia was doing it, it was actually Jen Psaki who said that that is a war crime. So there's hypocrisy. There's always these excuses as to why the US government can do it, but when another country does it, it's a war crime. It's a war crime when we do it too. But that's not what's being said. So here is Zelensky trying to tell you that basically he does not deserve the criticism for this and goes on to lie to you and tell you that Russia wasn't criticized when they did it. That is a lie.
That it was very useful to put them. So thank you so much for this help. We really counted on it, not only on this, I mean, that's totally. And you gave us huge support. I want to thank to all Americans. We understand that it's more than 43 billion for today. It's big support, and I understand that it's all your money, but you have to know that you spend this money for not just for fighting. You spend this money for our lives, and I think that we save the lives for Europe and for all the world.
How are you saving lives if you're using a weapon that is going to hurt civilians? How are you saying you're still losing lives? Listen, war is a racket. Seriously, let's not sit here and pretend like during war, it's only the soldiers who are injured or who are killed. That is not the case. And I believe the war in Vietnam really woke up a lot of people to that when they used to show war footage on television during the Vietnam War. That was the last time they did that. They stopped doing that because the American people were able to see that children were hurt. Innocent people that had nothing to do with the conflict at all. So how are you saving lives?
So thank you very much for this also summit. At the end of the summit, we had, I think, this council and great success and security guarantees, as you said, that we began to speak about it in Kiev. So now we see that you had great idea, that's G7, and now I know that last message that also there are countries which join to G7 decisions, and I think it will help very much because it's really fact that it's very concrete things. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for acknowledging the American people. I think it's correct that
Joe Biden is not well. Are you guys watching him in this video? Joe Biden is not well. Who's making these decisions?
we are a large country, but I think we've given more than every other nation combined in terms of assistance and cost. And the American people are supportive. They're supportive.
Speak for yourself, Joe. Which American people is he referring to when he says the American people are supportive? Who's he talking about? Is he talking about Congress? What about all the Americans who want this war to end? who want to call for peace, who want some type of negotiation, which, by the way, Russia did try to negotiate. What about those Americans? You don't get to speak for the rest of us, Joe. How dare you? In another country, go to Lithuania and basically tell everybody, yeah, the American people, they support it too. Speak for yourself.
Because they know it's about you, but it's about more than you. It's about innocent people around the world and the absolute brutality with which Putin is acting and the Russians are moving on. It's just...
And we'll never mention the fact that Ukraine provoked Russia. You'll never hear them say this. And this is not to say that Russia was right to invade, but they purposely leave out the fact that Ukraine provoked them for years. This didn't just come out of the blue. We never get to hear that other side. Have you ever noticed that? MSNBC, CNN, are they interviewing people in Russia? It's a controlled narrative. And then you do have independent journalists that are there, like Fiorella Isbell from the Convo Couch. Wyatt Reed has also been there. They're giving you the other side of the story that mainstream media is not giving you. And then those people are smeared as Putin puppets because why? Because they're telling you the other side of the story. There's two sides to a story. The narrative is controlled, especially when it comes to war. Mainstream media heavily controls the narrative. Let's go back to the Iraq war. Think about what we were told. There are weapons of mass destruction. There were no weapons of mass destruction. And the fact that we've been lied to repeatedly by our own government, the fact that so many people can't even sit back and say, I wonder if they're telling the truth about this conflict. Think, people. It's a hot mess. This man is not well.
It just sounds like something out of the 14th century, the way they're acting. And so, but I can't emphasize enough. And by the way, I know you thanked him, but I think we talked about it before I went to Tokyo a couple years ago. The idea that Kesheev is increasing their defense budget, having to lower their domestic budget to aid directly and get directly involved in what's happening in Ukraine.
They shouldn't be doing that. And this is what I said before. No other country should have to struggle or go into any type of debt. Their people should not have to struggle and suffer financially. I'm talking about the UK and I'm talking about Germany. For two examples, they should not go into a financial crisis, an economic crisis, because they're shelling out money to help Zelenskyy. It's just, I hope people see this for what it really is. When you have someone like Zelenskyy, let's remember Zelenskyy was an entertainer. He knows how to perform. So let's remember that. Let's remember how BlackRock came in. BlackRock is coming to set up shop in Ukraine. Surprise, surprise. So you got corporate money and you got MIC money. Every time I turn around, I see this man on the cover of a magazine. What is this really about? What is it really about? Think about this. I don't see people who are being killed and starving in Yemen on the cover of Vogue magazine and Time magazine. I don't see the people being bombed in Somalia on the cover of those magazines. Those people are suffering. Those people are struggling. I just talked earlier today about the conflict going on in Sudan, which people need to pay attention to. This is predicted to be the next proxy war. I don't see those people on the cover of Time magazine. But him and his wife on the cover of the magazine. What is happening here? I just hope people see this for what it really is.
Remarkable. The sad, sad news is you're in this situation. The incredible news is it's bringing the world together. It's bringing the world together in a way that it's a hell of a price to pay. But it's bringing the world together, and people are realizing that you just can't stand by and let this kind of aggression occur.
Okay. So he had that conversation with Zelensky, and there was a lot of media coverage in reference to the NATO summit that just happened. But behind the scenes, there was something else happening too in reference to this conflict. And you heavily need to pay attention to this, because I'm here to warn you that this is how it starts. The White House released a statement. May have skipped by some of you. This was released yesterday, ordering the selected reserve and certain members of the individual ready reserve of the armed forces to active duty. Listen to this. They're already starting. I'll make it a little bit bigger for you guys. I don't know what that thing is. Maybe I'll put it back. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including sections 121 and 12304 of Title 10, United States Code, I hereby determine that it is necessary to augment the active armed forces of the United States for the effective conduct of Operation Atlantic Resolve in and around the United States European Command's area of responsibility. Long story short, while mainstream media was so busy covering the NATO summit and a bunch of other garbage that's not really important, behind closed doors, Joe Biden and his administration were actively pursuing to send U.S. troops overseas. I kid you not, U.S. troops. Okay, so if you go to the top, it says selected reserve. This is how it begins, though. First, let's just send a couple of members from the armed reserve, the reserve officers. Reserve officers, they're the ones, they're not technically full-time, right? So 2 weekends out of the month, you work for the reserve, usually have another full-time job. But this is how it begins. Start off by sending them. And I sincerely hope more people cover this, because this is a big sign. This is not to de-escalate a situation. This is to escalate a situation if you're bringing in the U.S. troops. Let's go on with this statement. In furtherance of this operation, under the stated authority, I hereby authorize the Secretary of Defense and the Secretary of Homeland Security with respect to the Coast Guard when it is not operating as a service in the Navy, under the respective jurisdictions, to order to active duty any units and any individual members not assigned to a unit organized to serve as a unit of the selected reserve, or any member in the individual ready reserve mobilization category and designated as essential under regulations prescribed by the secretary concerned, not to exceed 3,000 total members at one time, of whom not more than 450 may be members of the individual ready reserve as they deem necessary, and to terminate the service of those units and members ordered to active duty. Let's talk about the number of 3,000. Not to exceed 3,000. But what will happen if some of those soldiers are killed? Then you send more to replace the ones that were killed. This is a very fancy academic way of saying I'm sending selected reserve troops to Europe. For any of you who are anti-war activists, you have to send this letter to your friends, your organizations. Not a lot of people are talking about this. I don't think a lot of people know. But you have to send this out to let people know what's happening right now. It goes on to say here, this order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. And that is signed by Joe Biden. And this is exactly what I was afraid of. That eventually they'll say the weapons aren't enough. It's not doing enough. And eventually it would get to the point where, well, they're not winning, which I'll get to that in just a second. So they need more help. So we had no choice but to send troops. This also shows you that the narrative that has come from mainstream media, which has continued to say that they were winning, that Ukraine was winning. Remember this? And I kept telling you that's a lie. This goes to show you that they were lying. If they were winning, why is he sending cluster bombs to Ukraine? And Zelenskyy just told you so himself in that conversation and said, we have no other choice. It's the only way we can really effectively fight back. If they were winning, why are they sending troops over? So I hope more people call this out, because this just shows you that CNN, MSNBC, they've been lying to you this whole time. I told you there was no way they were winning. If they were winning, we wouldn't have continued to send them more packages and more weapons. Now, this is a common sense thing. But people will sit there and they'll watch mainstream media and they'll just be like, well, they said on CNN today that Ukraine's actually winning and they're actually doing pretty well. No, like, use your brain. It's just like, I don't. Pay close attention to that. And we'll keep an eye on that. This is a mess. And I can't even tell you, it's 2023. Joe Biden hasn't even been in office the full 4 years yet. And we're already at this point. Already. Never met a war he didn't like. You have to remember there's money to be made here. And that's what this really comes down to at the end of the day. The money. It's embarrassing. It's disgusting. And I don't like Donald Trump. But I really do believe that he wouldn't have gotten us into this. What a mess. What a freaking mess. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric, and then I'll go to the chats on YouTube. Whee! Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Anna. Happy Friday, fams. I love your pushback on allies the most. Have you thought about having a guest like Sam Tripoli? You could talk about aliens, LOL. By the way, I only see Sons of Anarchy when I see Perlman. Interesting. I don't know how to reach Sam Tripoli. Someone else told me about him as well. And I was like, I don't know how to reach him. But we're about to get into aliens in a second anyway. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Helps me with the algo. Thank you very much. Natalie says, why does my brain feel like it's hemorrhaging whenever I listen to Biden? I don't even think Biden knows where he's at half the time, just being honest. Carlos, so true, Sabby. They're very quick to get the Ukrainians what they need, but what about us? So not fair. This war has to stop ASAP. Yep, I hope more people, more people are seeing it now. They got money for what they want to have money for. Thank you for the super chat, FWC. Cluster bombs, etc., are usually NATO, not Russia. Russia didn't, we'll say, assault kids. They saved them. Cluster bombs are for killing people only. Thank you, Marcos. Not one hijacker in September was Iraqi or Afghan. 15 to 19 were from Saudi Arabia, our best friend. Oh, but you can't talk about that though, Marcus. Thank you for the super chat, Kiski, a city. You found your voice. Oh, thank you. That's sweet. Thank you for the super chat with our eyes rise. Join our global daily peace party. From anywhere on earth for 9 seconds, we face Mount Kenya and meditate in and or pray for global peace. Daylight hours only, green lovers dream. Thank you for that. And thank you, Harrison. Sabby, get to the aliens. We're getting there right now. We're getting there right now. Let's talk about UFOs. Oh, yeah, it's getting good. So I don't know if everyone remembers, but there was a whistleblower that came forward recently to talk about UFOs and UFO, programs that he said was being hidden from Congress. Now, Dontel, you guys know him as Unapologetic. He has a show on YouTube, but he also has a Substack. He actually wrote about this. I want to get into this, and then we're going to get into a couple of clips. Dontel said Senators Schumer and Gillibrand put out explosive new UFO laws. So I think for those of you who are into the unknown, or curious about it like I am, you might appreciate this. That's right. Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand actually have put out legislation to declassify UFO info. Let's get into it. Over a month ago, whistleblower David Grush revealed to journalists, let me make this bigger. Okay. Over a month ago, whistleblower David Grush revealed to journalists that he has provided classified evidence as part of multiple government investigations into the allegations that there is an illegal government program to retrieve and reverse engineer UFOs. All the documents, interviews with witnesses who currently work in this program, locations of the bases, the names of current and former leaders, as well as everything else provided to investigators are still hidden behind the secrecy of classification until Congress or the president declassifies this information. We cannot judge for certain if this evidence is true. But the unprecedented reactions from anyone with the clearance to examine the evidence only adds to the credibility of Grush's story. Historic pieces of legislation on UFOs are moving through both the House and Congress, attached to the must-pass defense spending bill. So this is the biggie. This was actually pretty smart. They attached it to the defense spending bill. So if they want to pass that defense spending bill, then this is included along with it. So this would also pass. Just yesterday, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer introduced a bill to have the National Archive and Records Administration compile all documents on UFOs and prepare them for declassification immediately. That's the big part. Not a year from now, not by 2026, immediately. A review board of 9 members appointed by the president, then confirmed by the Senate, will create a timetable to publish all information on UFOs, on UFOs, unless they provide a reason the release of a document will comprise national security. When asked about the bill, Chuck Schumer said the American people have a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena. We have the right to learn and know about it. Get ready, guys. Get ready. We are not only working to declassify what the government has previously learned about the phenomena, but to create a pipeline for future research to be made public. This is huge. Can you imagine all the information that has been hidden from us? I know some of you don't believe in UFOs or extraterrestrials, and I get it. But I just feel the universe, again, is too vast for us to be the only ones. And I want to know what's out there. And I don't want to get on the spaceship to try to find out. So if there's information that has been, classified that we have no idea what that information is, this could make it so that we now have the right to know. And I want to go into this clip here from News Nation.
And breaking news tonight from Capitol Hill, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says he will introduce new legislation to declassify government records related to UFOs and UAPs. That is a big deal, and this just came down within the last couple of minutes. And it comes as things are really starting to take shape for the UFO hearings on Capitol Hill, with House leadership just today confirming that they are tentatively scheduled for the end of this month. The hearings will be happening in just a couple of weeks. But those in charge of the hearings have been tight-lipped about the witnesses that they plan to call, even telling us that the Pentagon has already begun running interference on the possible whistleblowers. More on that in just a moment. The announcement about the timing of the hearings comes after our reports here on News Nation, straight from whistleblowers who came forward with new evidence and allegations that the government knows more than it's telling us about alien vehicles and aircraft, UFOs, known in government lingo as unidentified aerial phenomena.
That the government knows more than what they are telling us. And that does not surprise me. I've felt that way for quite some time. What's really happening at Area 54? Someone told me that's where all the McDonald's ice cream machines go because they're always broken. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to get ice cream from McDonald's, but it seems like every time you try to, they're like, oh, can I get an ice cream cone? We can't. The ice cream machine is broken. Every time? For my whole life? Or 51, sorry. Did I say 54? Area 51, sorry. Yeah, I want to know what's there. Studio 54. That's what I was thinking of, Daddy. Yeah. I want to know. I'm curious. I'm nosy. I want to see all of it. Not just what has been revealed recently, but I want to see the Roswell files. I want to know what happened. I want to be Scully, damn it. Let's go back in.
Those whistleblowers include Air Force veteran and former military intelligence officer David Grush.
These are retrieving non-human origin technical vehicles, call it spacecraft if you will, non-human, exotic origin vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
Those claims getting serious traction. Here's Oversight Chair James Comer confirming the hearings to News Nation just today.
Now, remember, he said those are vehicles that have either landed or crashed.
Yeah, we're going to try to get that in this month. I will tell you this, I've been surprised at the number of questions I've received on that hearing. So I think there's a lot of interest. There's certainly a lot of curiosity out there about that issue. And with what we're seeing with the majority of Americans right now, there's absolutely no trust or confidence in the government right now. So I think that has the potential to be a pretty sensitive subcommittee hearing.
No trust in the government. He's right about that. He is right about that.
And one of the leaders of those hearings will be Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee, who we had on the show this week. I really tried to press him on who he has lined up to go before the subcommittee to give evidence of what he alleges is a government cover-up of UFO evidence. I know you don't want to give away much. Can you give us just a little hint of what to expect with the hearings? I mean, do you have multiple people lined up at this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, I would hope, a half a dozen people. We're going to have some people that I would hope from the scientific community. We're going to hopefully have some pilots. We're going to have some whistleblowers, some others. But, as soon as I announce that the Pentagon puts a squeeze on them, which they've already started with some of.
Why is the Pentagon trying to do that? Think about this, guy. Why is the Pentagon already trying to, as he put it, put the squeeze on it? What is it that the Pentagon doesn't want the American people to hear? Remember, when they have these hearings are recorded, just like we saw like the FBI director testimony, right? What are they afraid of? Are they afraid people may panic? Is that why they've been hiding information from us?
Are alleged witnesses, so we're going to keep it pretty close to the cuff, and then when we release it, it'll be public record to everybody, because I'm not going to play the secret game.
So who exactly could be coming to Washington and giving sworn testimony about UFOs, and how concerned should they actually be? Joining me now, Jeremy Corbell, investigative journalist and co-host of the Weaponized podcast. He obtained and released the military-filmed Pentagon-confirmed UFO videos that put into motion the first congressional hearings on UFOs in over 50 years.
If you guys know how to reach this guy, I could maybe invite him on. I couldn't find contact info for him either.
Jeremy, let me first ask you about this. I'm going to read the tweet because Senator Schumer just put this out a little while ago. I'm introducing new legislation to declassify government records related to unidentified anomalous phenomena and UFOs as an amendment to the NDAA modeled after the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act. Jeremy, how big of a deal is this?
It's a huge deal. It's a bipartisan measure to force the release of UFO records. And we're really living in a different time. As Representative Burchett said, we are over the target when it comes to this issue. And that is why we are seeing pushback. I can tell you from an inside look that we are seeing two types of pushback. First of all, defense contractors, they have...
Before we get to that part, I just want to go back to the text because I don't know if you had a chance to read this. So Jeremy Corbell obtained and released Pentagon confirmed UFO videos. Only civilians specifically named in the opening of the congressional UFO hearing. He's the co-host of the investigative series Weaponized, featuring evidence related to UFO science and cover-ups. Like I said, if you guys know how to reach this dude, let me know. But I am very curious. I saw one of the comments. I don't know what's in that safe. One of you like, what's in that safe behind him? I don't know. Maybe it's an alien.
We are seeing two types of pushback. First of all, defense contractors, they have lobbying power. And this is an issue when you're asking to see the goodies. There's also turf wars by congressional staff. You know, how, when, who is testifying. This is a question that everybody's trying to figure out because these are coming up. So look, Representative Burchett wants first-hand witnesses, not bureaucrats like last time. So that's the difference that we're seeing now. You know, this is simple. It's not complicated. Direct witnesses are ready to roll. They just need to be told the date.
Thank you for watching.
You guys heard that? I told you, people are ready. They're not backing down. They're ready to talk about what they've seen. And here's the thing. I know a lot of people are just like, it could be anything in the sky. It doesn't mean that it's like extraterrestrial or whatever. Cool. But then tell us what it is. And that's the thing. They don't even tell you what it is if it's not that. You know, what are they hiding from us? Now, I want to show you this clip here. Does the government know more about UFOs than it's saying? Let's get to this clip because I think this is very telling. And honestly, I don't think they would tell us. Do you guys?
So, Joe, did these numbers surprise you?
Honestly, no, not surprising to me. And so we're learning a lot about how the American public feels as it relates to UAPs and whistleblowers.
Sorry, you didn't see that percentage part. I just want to make sure you saw that. The poll is 57% believe the U.S. government is hiding UFO info.
So, Joe, did these numbers surprise you?
Honestly, no, not surprising to me. And so we're learning a lot about how the American public feels as it relates to UAPs and whistleblowers. We're also going to be learning more about how Congress feels, because one of those, imagine 57% of Americans, is Congressman Tim Burchett, who spoke to News Nation earlier today. He has been on a crusade to try to get the Pentagon and the Department of Defense to release more of their files, to declassify reports about UAPs as it relates to whistleblower claims, and to release videos that they allegedly have showing some of these aircraft in the air. And one of the ways he's doing that is by planning a congressional hearing, which you heard about first here on News Nation. We broke.
So they're talking about the congressional hearing, which we just talked about before this video. But he's talking about, you know, releasing these videos of the objects flying through the air. I think we've seen a lot of videos of UFOs flying in the air over the years, right? I think what people want to see are these vehicles that, according to Grush, have actually landed and crashed. I think people want to see video footage of that so you can see it close up and people try to figure, you know, what does it look like close up? I don't really need to see another video of a dot flying in the air. You know what I mean? Like, we wanted to see it like more close up. So I'd be curious to see those pictures and the videos of those vehicles that actually landed or crashed, like Grush was referring to. And it'll be really interesting to see if these witnesses are ready to go, like he said they are, ready to come forward. It'll be really interesting to see what they're going to show, if they have pictures or they have videos. That's what I'm ready for. Bring it, honey, bring it.
This news, he and a couple of others are planning this sort of first of its kind hearing focusing on UAP whistleblowers. Sources confirmed to us even today that they are still now in the planning stages for this hearing. I should mention our sources emphasize that nothing is set in stone yet, but the plan and the hope from lawmakers pushing this is sometime by the end of this month or early next month. They wanted to have a field hearing. There was discussion around having it not here in the Capitol, but rather in Florida. Again, nothing confirmed at this point. But Burchett this morning says it's time that a lot of these military whistleblowers, especially those who are flying planes for the U.S. military, need to be heard.
If you talk to some of the best pilots in the world and they tell you that they've seen these objects, and then when they do report it, they get interrogated for like up to 8 hours and they get a blemish on their record. So I've talked to pilots who've lived.
Isn't that crazy? See, I wanted you guys to hear that. Pilots who have reported seeing UFOs, and again, that doesn't mean they saw an alien, that just means unidentified flying objects, have reported that they're basically being punished for reporting it. Isn't that interesting?
Literally said, we've destroyed any evidence of these videos because we don't want to have to go through all that. We've seen it. We all talk about it.
Now, I think it's worth reminding the public about the claims that David Grush has made, former Air Force intel officer, when he came forward on our network. His claim was that there is a program within the government that is designed to retrieve crashed UAPs, which, in his words, what he is hearing, don't appear to be made by human hands.
Okay, let's pause on that part. David said there is a program by the government, and that is their sole duty is to go out there and to retrieve those UFO vehicles. Now, David would have to provide some receipts, obviously, but don't you guys question the timing of Chuck Schumer and Gillibrand pushing the legislation to declassify UFO info? Connected to this, the whistleblower comes forward. Now it says, okay, let's go ahead and we got to push to declassify all that information. Why would they do that if it was something that they felt, and not saying that they know, but why would they feel the need and the push to do that? Because there is a whistleblower, and apparently there's other witnesses as well that are ready to come forward at this hearing and testify. Let's go on.
Now, here's the new polling done by Newsweek that you referenced off the top here, showing, again, 57% of registered voters believe that the government knows more or has more about UAPs than they are letting on. So as the issue gets more coverage, clearly it's making an impact on people's opinions and people's views of this. Whether that moves the Pentagon and the DOD to declassify and release some of this information, Kelly, that remains to be seen right now.
Thank you for watching.
And if it's not an issue, why is the Pentagon getting involved in trying to stop it? Trying to stop you from seeing that information? I know what some of you are thinking. I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, I've been wondering for quite some time, but I believe that those people should be allowed to come forward. And if it is a hoax and they're just BSing and all that jazz, then so be it. Let that be revealed then. But I want to know. Giovanni says, ask yourself why their declassification is happening today after 60 years of violent hiding. These are like, it's a good question. Miss Mississippi says, this is a distraction. I'm sorry, Miss Mississippi. I'm curious about things that I think the government's hiding. Brian says, why are they telling us this stuff now? It has to be part of a PSYOP. This is the question a lot of people are asking. Thank you for the super chat, Oz. I trust Chucky like Pfizer never. UFO is a distraction. Thank you, Anthony. DJ Dark Journalist, Danny for UFO info in Cambridge. DJ Dark Journalist, Danny for UFO info in Cambridge. Were you trying to send me the email, an email address, Anthony? I'll look that up. JT, Sabby, you need to talk to Dr. Stephen Greer from the Disclosure Project. There's another person I could reach out to. Thank you for the super chat, Ronwell. Off topic, but thanks for discussing SAG-AFTRA strike on RBN that I DM'd you about this child celebrity who I'm a huge fan of. Thank you for that, Ronwell. Thank you, Hector. Don't have this guy, Jeremy, on Sabby. He has been totally and completely been debunked. What a cute little dog. I love the doggy little picture. Oh, it's so cute. Cute little pup. I saw a show today. It's this new show on Netflix called Thickness. The Thick Chick or something. Anyway, Thick something. I forget. It's saved somewhere. Anyhow, in one of the episodes, I actually saw a dog wedding. Did you know that dogs can get married? This is something apparently rich people do where they bring their dog. Anyway, thank you for that, Hector. Eccentricast. If it's unidentified, how would they know what it is? But that's the thing. I think they do know. I think they do know what these things are. Thank you, Simply. For alien stuff, I would implore you to look at Dr. Stephen Greer's work. Another one for Stephen Greer. The PSYOP is that they want to stage an intergalactic war. They already copied UFOs. Ooh. And thank you for the super chat, JT. Talk to Dr. Stephen Greer. Okay, that's 3 for Stephen Greer. And thank you, FWC. UFO can be true and still be a PSYOP. It's a good point. Pete says dog weddings are rough. No, I kid you not. I did not know that this was a thing. It's thick. Netflix, thick. I don't know why I can't remember. I was like, Survival of the Thickest. That's what it's called. Survival of the Thickest. Yeah. And her client had a dog wedding. So I was like, this is a thing? I don't know. It's just not my jam. Not for Sabs. Thank you for the super chat, Miss. Try getting Dark Journalist on. He does the best explanation, the infighting on UFO disclosure. He'd be happy to be a guest. Okay. Dark Journalist and Dr. Stephen Greer. I will check those out. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Wow, I can actually brag about something both my senators did. This is a great idea. Perhaps us New Yorkers should push Chuck and Gillibrand to also attach Medicare for all, reinstate postal banking, National Infrastructure Bank to Pentagon spending bill. We deserve a UFO call-in, Sabby, LOL. No call-in tonight. Got plans after the shows. Plans after the show. Survival of the Thickest. Check it out. All right, let's move on to our next story here. Good old Oprah Winfrey. You know, when I was growing up, I really had a lot of admiration for Oprah. You know, I went to college, studied broadcast journalism and English. Like, for me, Oprah was kind of like that. When I'm looking for someone that is a great host or a great interviewer, Oprah was that inspiration for me, right? So I loved Oprah, thought she was the best of the best, the best, the best. Then I got older and I started to realize there were some things about Oprah Winfrey that were just not okay, actually. That goes far back to her first start into journalism, some of the people that she stepped on to get to where she is, some of the things that she did, some of the people that she sold out. You don't get to become a billionaire without exploiting people along the way, some way, shape, or form, right? And then there were stories about the company that she would keep. Oprah was another one who was apparently very close to Harvey Weinstein. There were just things that I did not pay close attention to. There is a story that came out recently. I don't think a lot of people are going to cover this. But you know, Oprah has had spiritual advisors. Marianne Williamson was a former spiritual advisor to Oprah Winfrey. And she also had a spiritual healer. Her spiritual healer, who, by the way, I want to start off, before I get into this article, I want to start off by saying they are already guilty. They were already guilty. So don't come for me, okay? They were already guilty, and now there is more. So let's get into this story. Oprah's spiritual healer, sentenced to 99 years, we're going to say assaulting, for assaulting girls and accused of baby trafficking. This was released July 11th, 2023. Now, we got Oprah, who's buddy with Harvey Weinstein. Apparently also has some connection to Jeffrey Epstein. I don't think Oprah knows how to pick them. Right? Let's get into this story. This is crazy shit. Moving on. So that's him. Okay? All right. Oprah's personal spiritual healer, Joao de Deus, or John of God, has been sentenced to an additional 99 years in prison after being found guilty of assaulting hundreds of women and young girls. So I want to be clear again. He was already guilty. Just want to make this very clear. This was news to me too. I did not know about any of this. Okay? He was already guilty. This is in addition to the sentence that he already has. And I see some of you in the chat saying you didn't know about this either. So we need to ask the question, why didn't we know about this? Let's go on. For decades, from his small town in center-west Brazilian state, I ain't even going to try to pronounce that, but Teixeira de Faria built a worldwide reputation as a medium and faith healer. Oprah Winfrey endorsed, this is John of, make sure I'm saying this correctly, John of God, endorsed John of God on her talk show in 2012 after traveling all the way to Brazil to interview him, calling him inspiring and encouraging women to seek his help. So she went to see him. Let's go on. This was reported. John of God gained a following of faithful foreigners who call him John of God when he appeared on a program by American presenter Oprah Winfrey in 2012. Among his international fans, figure like former U.S. President Bill Clinton, actress Shirley MacLaine, and model Naomi Campbell. Now, does anybody see any similarities here? There's Bill Clinton, who was also friends with Epstein. Could just be a coincidence. Let's go on. But his empire came crashing down in 2018 when a scandal of gigantic proportions broke, revealing that the medium had assaulted or abused hundreds of women and girls who sought his spiritual help. Now, Oprah, I don't want to say she recruited these women, but she encouraged women to seek help from him. And this guy was an abuser. Let's go on. Okay. This Monday, the 10th, the medium better known as John of God was sentenced to an additional sentence of 99 years in prison for sexual crimes. John of God will spend the rest of his life behind bars, but the most disturbing allegations against him have been brushed under the carpet. The baby trafficking operation. An anti-child trafficking activist blew the whistle, claiming John of God ran a baby trafficking operation where children were then sold to childless couples. The what? Never heard of this guy. There's Oprah again. Activist Sabrina Bittencourt, whose investigations led to his arrest. So this is the activist who actually was able to bring him down, whose investigations led to his arrest, claims the celebrity medium ran a baby trafficking operation where children were farmed in Brazil before being sold to childless couples around the world. She alleges that young girls were held captive in remote farms where they were forced to produce babies before being murdered after 10 years of giving birth. What the what? Again, I want to remind you, whether you believe this or not, this guy has already been, he was already convicted. They added 99 years onto the sentence he already had. Bittencourt spoke to women from 3 continents who claimed they bought Brazilian babies from John of God. These girls were murdered after 10 years of giving birth. We've got a number of testimonies. She added, we have received reports from the adoptive mothers of their children that were sold for between $20,000 and $50,000 in Europe, the USA, and Australia, as well as testimony from ex-workers and local people who are tired of being complicit with John of God's gang. But in a shocking but hardly unexpected turn of events, Sabrina Bittencourt was found to have committed suicide while living in Spain under protection from death threats she was receiving. The what? Just like Jeffrey Epstein, right? The Sun reported sexual abuse support group Víctimas Unidas, which worked with Sabrina, said she had left a note explaining why she committed suicide. Eldest son Gabriel Baum confirmed her death, writing on Facebook, she took the last step so that we could live. They killed my mother. Okay, now, I told you I never heard of this guy. I never heard this story before. So when I saw that, I was like, I need to do a little bit more digging. And apparently, BuzzFeed reported on this in 2018 when John of God was originally sentenced. So somebody covered it. But if you Google this, there's not much information to be found. I'm here to tell you. So this is what BuzzFeed said. Again, 2018. This is from Hayes Brown. John of God was once hyped by Oprah. Now he's accused of abusing hundreds of women. So Hayes broke this story. There he is there. This is very tiny text. Maybe BuzzFeed is one of those ones. John of God, he's a Brazilian medium healer, subject of a profile by Oprah, as of earlier this week, accused of abusing hundreds of women. Listen to this. Faria became famous for his intense methods of healing. Though he doesn't have a medical license, he performs both spiritual healing, praying intensely for believers and placing hands on them to cure their afflictions, and what appeared to be actual surgical procedures without anesthesia. This was crazy. He has been written about for years since his practice started in 1978. But an episode of Oprah in 2012 devoted to him raised his profile exponentially. Last Friday, 4 women appeared on Brazilian television to accuse him of abusing them when they'd come to him for assistance. Speaking of TV Globo, 3 of the women described their encounters with him to host Pedro Bial on condition of anonymity. Dutch choreographer Zahira decided to be named and said that during one of her trips to see the healer, to be cured of the trauma of previous sexual abuse, he took her into back room, and you can read that there. It's YouTube. We gotta be careful. So she went to see him about trauma she had from sexual abuse, and he sexually abused her. Let's go on. I really hope I can help other women out of the shadow, because we do not need to feel ashamed. He has to feel ashamed, and all the people who protected him so he can continue to do what he does. She later told the New York Times in an interview that she heard of John of God from a friend and had seen Oprah Winfrey's documentary. On Monday, Brazilian prosecutors announced that since the program had aired, more than 200 women came forward to say that they had also been abused by John of God while seeking treatment. So it was actually that segment from Oprah that made more victims come forward. Seeing this guy on TV and be like, whoa, 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 you cannot promote this guy. We go down to this point here. His lawyer in an interview said that there was something amiss in just how many people were coming forward. There were 10, there were 20, they were talking about 200, which is strange. This is something we are investigating. Was it considered strange when that happened to Bill Cosby? Just because it's a lot of people doesn't mean it didn't happen. Sounds like to me, John was running some type of cult. And again, keep in mind, this guy was already convicted. They already found him guilty. They came back and added on more years to the sentence. So what does that tell you? I don't hear Oprah talking about this. I see Oprah on TV talking about everything else. Oprah talked to Meghan and Prince Harry, or former Prince, whatever he is now. Oprah will sit up there and, let me have a conversation with Jay-Z. Let me talk to President Obama. But I don't hear Oprah talking about John. Some sick people in this world. Now, here's the screenshot, a screenshot from a Brazilian airing of Winfrey's 2010 episode on John of God, since removed from YouTube. So that episode of Oprah's, she removed it, or somebody from Harpo, whatever, they removed it. But there's the screenshot. Okay, John of God right there. Now, listen to this. Among those whom Casey spoke to for her article is Dr. Oz, a longtime Oprah collaborator who in 2005 examined his claims for ABC's News Primetime Live. When talking to ABC, Oz was creditless about the possibility that the healer's methods work saying that Faria's surgeries could be an old magician's trick, but it's a pretty powerful one from a physician's perspective. I think the next big frontier is unlocking doors to energy medicine. This is coming from Dr. Oz. Sound like a money scam. Oh my God. Who has come under fire for his promotion of unscientific methods of healing over the years on his syndicated television show. It dramatically broadens our vista of opportunities to heal. The challenge we have is that energy is not as easily quantified as the surgeon's scalpel. If we can understand what role he's playing in reversing illness, we should be doing that here. Now, here's Dr. Oz saying, yeah, we can understand it. Let's do what he's doing too. You see the connection, all these people, Dr. Oz, Oprah, Bill Clinton, John of God, Epstein. After the profile, Winfrey herself traveled to Brazil in 2020 to meet with him for an episode of Oprah's Next Chapter that would air the next year. In the episode, in a written piece, she said she experienced something profound with the medium during a period where she was worrying about the health of the Oprah Winfrey network, her television channel. She's a billionaire. Don't know why she would be that concerned. I closed my eyes and sat quietly, feeling the rhythm of my breath. Tears of gratitude started to flow. Gratitude for the whole journey of my life, not just everything that had gone right, but the things that had not. Guys, this is a I went to Brazil in 2012 to tape an episode of Oprah's Next Chapter that explored controversial healing methods of John of God. The episode aired in 2013. I empathize with the women now coming forward and hope justice is served. A representative for OWN didn't return a request for comment. After everything that happened, that was the response. And then here's a picture. Faria's followers demonstrate in Brazil on December 13th. But I told you this was a scam, a cult scam. The fuck? I told you guys, some of these rich people want some weird shit. I knew it. The scandal has yet to dissuade Faria's followers from flocking to the small town where Faria runs his healing center. Now, again, this was before they got him. This is before he was arrested. Now, I want to click on that article, that link right there, told the New York Times. So even the New York Times reported on it. Celebrity healer in Brazil is accused of sexually abusing followers. So look, this was December 11, 2018. So the New York Times reported on this as well. I'm just going to say this. There are some sick people out there. And I don't know any of these people personally. But I'll just go back to what we said at the very beginning. This guy was already convicted. So they had enough to convict him. And this gentleman, I should not call him a gentleman. This guy just got 99 more years added on to that sentence. But there is something off here. Something really, all these people, it's the same, here's Dr. Oz, who's actually a medical doctor, saying, well, maybe we should look into what he's doing over there. What? Sounds like a scam. Sounds like a money scam. I knew there was something not right. But I hope more people, you share this story with people. People need to know about this. And I don't care if you like Oprah or not. But there is something off about this here. Let's just keep it real. Thank you for the super chat, M. Smith. Oprah is a M-effing gatekeeper. Thank you, Miss. Corbel works as a psyop. And thank you, the amazing Blumpkin. And who are all these folks smack talking sound of freedom? O's record of unleashing hell on us is odd. Next time, Oprah, thanks, but no thanks. I have not seen Sound of Freedom, but this is weird. Very weird. Okay, let's go to the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. 50 was right. She spent so much of her life bashing black men, with hip hop being a convenient excuse, but not watching men on her right flank who were not black. But in 80s and 90s, you couldn't say nothing about her, or else the sisters would come after you like a pack of elderly sisters for criticizing the Democratic Party. When she would lend her help to black people, it would be from other countries. I've noticed that. I did notice that about her. I'm sorry, Bryce. I'm going to be saying F Oprah the whole night now, Sabby. Thanks. I'm sorry. There is something off here. It just, I don't like that energy over there. Okay. I do not like that. A-Ross says covering for wealthy men. Oh no, maybe more people will talk about this. That's a scary story. Like, I'm like, are people seeing this? Okay. And shout out to Tamisha for becoming a new member. Give Tamisha a big whoop, whoop. All right. All right, we're going to get into our final story tonight. This is in reference to Cornell West and black voters. You know, the mainstream media pundits are starting to get really nervous. They are now saying that they are afraid that Cornell West will take the black vote away from the Democratic Party, hurt Joe Biden, because you know the Democratic Party cannot win without the black vote, right? So now they're starting to get really scared. So much to the point that even the Morning Joe pundits, what's her name? Mia? I forget her name. The Morning Joe pundits are going so far to actually blame Joe Biden's staff for his cognitive decline, instead of blaming Joe Biden and basically saying, not blaming Joe Biden for cognitive decline, but blaming the fact that Joe Biden should not be in office right now. Instead of putting the blame on that and saying, yes, he's having these mental, breaks, these issues, he needs to resign because he's not fit to be leading the country right now. They're actually going to blame Joe Biden's staff. This is how desperate and how nervous they're starting to get, because of the fact that they do realize that someone like Cornel West could appeal to a certain segment of the population. But I don't think it's just black voters. He appeals to a lot of people because of the policies that he's running on and the fact that he's been consistent so much through over the years. Listen to this, guys. It's now the staff's fault that Joe Biden is not doing well.
Reagan, they also managed his schedule very carefully.
Yeah, I think his staff needs to own his age. I'm just going to be honest. I don't think they do a good job helping out the president. And I'm not talking about it like, I'm just saying, if you are managing a president's schedule and you are managing a president getting on stage and getting off stage and getting on planes and getting off planes, and yes, he's 80. You need to be there for him and you need to make a pathway. And you sure as hell better make sure he doesn't fall on a sandbag. And
let's just pause there before we get through the rest of it. You see the scapegoating? It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden doesn't know where he's at. It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden fell. It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden is, slurring his words sometimes. It's the staff's fault that Joe Biden is experiencing cognitive decline. You see how desperate they are getting? Because they are starting to realize that it is very much a real possibility that Joe Biden could lose re-election. That's how bad this is. This is how far they have gone.
I blame the staff for that. I mean, these are the things that are going to hurt him. These are things that are going to be played on a loop. Okay? Let him do his job. Let him do his speeches. Let him work on policy. Let him do his connections in Congress, unlike any president that we've seen. I don't know, since Clinton. But my God, make sure, your Secret Service, you're his staff, that you were there and you're telling him what's next. And it's not because, don't take this as, oh, he can't even get from one place to another. When you're busy and you're on stage, and we've been on stage, right. I've done speeches, and I'm so nervous. I'm doing the speech. I'm trying to get it right. And when it's done, I don't know which way to go. And I'm looking for direction.
Are they the president of the United States? I didn't think they were. They're not the president of the United States. Okay. There were other presidents of the United States before Joe Biden. We didn't see them have this type of confusion. Now, you got to remember where they come from. Okay. Remember, he was a Republican. Just keep this in mind. She, if I remember correctly, her family was already in the DC, DC inside. So she's a DC insider. Okay. Just keep that in mind, guys. These people are status quo. They're going to go against anything that's outside of the status quo. But you need to understand where they come from. You need to understand that these are wealthy people and that Mika already was a DC insider. You might as well say DNC as well, but she was already a DC insider. So just keep that in mind.
So do a better job, because you can't have these video images of the president tripping or the president going the wrong way. It's not going to work in this presidency because his age is going to be a factor. His age is going to be a factor, and it's your job to make sure he gets from one place to another. He can handle the.
So they're supposed to come help him walk across the stage now? This is so pathetic. This is really bad. So they're supposed to, Red goes, is it the White House or retirement home? Thank you. What's happening here? Blaming the staff.
Presidency. You have to handle his schedule and where he goes.
Well, and the scheduling.
It makes me mad.
The scheduling is so important. You have, with every president, you have different strengths, you have different weaknesses. If
So you guys can see what's already starting to happen, right? They're going to blame everybody else, even go so far as to not just blame other candidates, but they're also going to blame the staff, which is what's happening right now. Now, all of a sudden, it's the staff's fault. Typical status quo corporate mainstream media trying to do everything that they can to cover for Joe Biden. Now, why is that important? Why was it important that you saw that clip? The reason why they are flustered the way they were, at least she was so flustered, is because the writing is on the wall. There are two people primary challenging Joe Biden within the Democratic Party. Then you have Dr. West challenging Joe Biden outside the Democratic Party. And let's keep it real. If you look at the polls, the majority of Americans want a third party. They see Joe Biden's approval numbers and they realize he could actually lose this thing. Maybe the Democratic Party shouldn't have chosen Joe Biden. But now there is also another concern in reference to Cornel West, and that is African-American voters. I want you to hear this conversation on CNN between Aaron and former Mayor Bottoms from Atlanta and some other dude. I forgot his name. Sorry. But shout out to
I've done speeches and I'm so nervous. I'm doing the speech. I'm trying to get it right. And when it's done, I don't know which way to go. And
stop. Sorry. I'm sorry, guys. She came back. Shout out to Case Study QB for this clip.
Mayor Bottoms, when you talk about the situation, obviously you've got Joe Manchin and Jonah mentioned RFK Jr., who's running in the primaries, but you've got a Green Party candidate who's going to be on that final ballot, right? I mean, that's the way it goes. The Green Party is a party. Cornel West. David Axelrod was saying he's worried about Cornel West. He believes that could cost Biden dearly, right?
That's the point. Like, you don't run against another politician to not do some type of damage towards them politically. Otherwise, you just might as well stay at home. That is the point. The point is not for Joe Biden to be reelected. That's why he has challengers. That's why people are like, well, no, he's not doing the job. We need a different path. We need a different moment. And that moment is now. So it's interesting to me the way that they discuss it. They discuss it as though it should just be a shoo-in because he's already the incumbent. He shouldn't have any challengers. There shouldn't be any debates, and that you should just give it to him because he's already in there, even though he's not the best person for the job. And that's not democracy, as much as they like to brag about the fact of protecting our democracy. Ain't no damn democracy in this country. Miss me with all of that. Look at how they rig things. But this idea that you're not supposed to do any type of damage to Joe Biden politically, you're supposed to go soft on him. That's the mentality that I believe is incredibly dangerous in this country. Just because someone is an incumbent does not mean they deserve a second shot. Let's go on.
Have to siphon off a few thousand votes in a few states. Do you worry that a progressive African-American candidate is going to appeal more to Black voters who have been cooling to Biden in recent polls? We see it in recent polls. Support for Biden among African-Americans dropped from 84% in 2021. It's down to 56% earlier this year.
Pause. Everybody better wake up. I was trying to warn people about this, and people said, no, Sabrina, you're exaggerating. It's not that way. Look at this. In September 2021, Joe Biden's approval rating for African Americans is 84%. May of 2023, 56%. And it's not just that, but studies have shown that now there are Black men who are leaving the Democratic Party. And it's not just Black men, but they have the highest percentage leaving the Democratic Party right now. And they're going to the Republican Party. What does that tell you? The party doesn't do anything for you. Can't sit up here on this campaign trail, make all these promises to Black people, say you're going to do this, you're going to do that. I'm going to forgive those student loans for those of you who went to HBCUs and make under $125,000 again. Those days are gone where you can just continue to lie to us and say you're going to do things and then not do them, especially during a time when people were hurting economically because of the inflation. So they're scared. Let's go on.
I mean, that's a stunning plunge.
Yeah, I'm more concerned, Aaron, about African-American voters and voters in general staying at home than I am about a third-party candidate. It's not ideal.
And then this one right here, Mayor Keisha Bottoms. She's more concerned, or former mayor, excuse me. She's more concerned about voters staying at home than she said she is a third-party candidate. Listen to this again. Listen to this again. Watch, because I'm going to tell you what she's really saying.
I'm more concerned, Aaron, about African-American voters and voters in general staying at home than I am about a third-party candidate.
What she's really telling you is she's worried about them staying at home because that means they're not voting for the Democratic Party. When she tells you she's not worried about the third-party candidate because she knows African-Americans are more likely to vote Democratic Party. So she wants you to come out and vote for the Democrats. Former mayor of Atlanta, how's the Democratic Party doing for Black people in Atlanta? How's that working out? What about the police shootings that happened when she was in office, when she was mayor of Atlanta? The police brutality cases, the videos that went viral under her leadership? What about the cop city? Again, this city, that's mainly Democrats in office. The mayor's a Democrat. Most of the people in city council are Democrat. And some of the Black city councilors voted in favor of Cop City. So how's that working out? You see, even on the local level, if you go to some of these cities like Atlanta, where most of the people in the political positions are Democrats, they're not doing nothing for black voters either. It's a big problem across the board.
Home than I am about a third party candidate. It's not ideal. Obviously, every single vote will matter. But what we are seeing are voters are becoming increasingly unhappy with elected officials. That's not particular to President Biden. But again, I believe that when the policies are focused on in the midst of a campaign, when people are reminded of how the American Rescue Plan Fund sent money to cities in Atlanta. It stopped us from having to furlough city employees. It allowed us
interview people in Atlanta and ask them how far that money actually went for them. Because if you talk to people about the American, rescue plan and all that jazz, that wasn't cutting it, boo. That wasn't cutting it. So here she is repeating the same, similar talking points that Ro Khanna has out here shilling for Joe Biden. How can you even make this statement right now, Keisha Bottoms? How can you make this statement right now? How can you actually sit up there and defend the Democratic Party given what's happening in your own city right now, goddammit? When you got a $90 million Cop City facility being built that was approved by corporations, that was funded by corporations, and where the Democratic Party jumped in line and signed on for it. How can you go to the people? How can you go to your constituents, black constituents right now in Atlanta, and tell them to go out and vote for the Democratic Party? How can you do it with no shame? Unless you're looking for another political position. You're looking to be on someone's committee or something. Make it make sense.
Money to cities in Atlanta. It stopped us from having to furlough city employees. It allowed us to do things that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. When these type policies, I think, are put in front of the voters at the height of a campaign, I'm less concerned about a third party candidate. Do I wish that there were not a third party candidate? Certainly.
You heard that? Why does she wish there wasn't a third party candidate? You see, this is what happens a lot of times. The Democratic Party, they'll pick African Americans like Keisha and tell the people, look, there's someone there who represents you. She looks like you. She's going to fight for the African American community. That shit don't happen most of the time. They get in there, they rub elbows with other rich politicians who have been there for decades. They get cozy with donors and other corporations, and they end up being just like everybody else who came before them. And oftentimes I see a lot of black folk fall for this over and over again and assume we fell for this with Obama and assume that because they look like us, that they're going to fight for us. Well, all skin folk are not kin folk, boo. And if you haven't learned that from people like Barack Obama, I don't know what else to tell you. But they use them as a tool. People talk about white supremacy. White supremacy isn't just about white people. White supremacy can also be a part of institutions, a part of organizations. White supremacy is also a tool. And one of the most effective tools of white supremacy is to get black people to turn on other black people for a sense of power. And this is what they will do. They'll pick someone like her. They'll pick a Stacey Abrams. They picked a Barack Obama. They'll pick these people to fool you and trick you and to make you think you're actually getting somewhere. You're not getting anywhere. They'll get somewhere individually. Their pockets will get fatter. They'll get a political career that they dreamed for. But for the most part, on a community level, ain't nothing else happening for you, boo. One of the greatest tools of white supremacy is to get black people to do it for you. That's Keisha Bottoms. That was Barack Obama. That's just Stacey Abrams. Those people out there tap dancing for Jim Crow Joe, looking like the Peanut Man. It's a hot mess.
Cornell West has a lot of respect, not just in the African American community, but across the country. So do I wish that he were not a candidate? I certainly do, because we know.
That don't make no damn sense what she just said. Go back to it. She's going to say all these good things about Cornel West, but then she's going to tell you she doesn't want him to be a candidate.
A third-party candidate? Certainly. Cornel West has a lot of respect, not just in the African-American community, but across the country. So do I wish that he were not a candidate? I certainly do, because we know that the margins will be thin, but I'm still very confident that President Biden will be reelected.
She just told you Dr. West has a lot of respect in the African American community. A lot of the things that Dr. West has done, he's a great person, but she wishes that he wasn't a candidate. How dumb does that sound? You got these buffoons out here tap dancing for Jim Crow Joe. That don't make no damn sense. These people are party loyalists. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So-and-so is great. He's a champion. He fights for the people. He fights within the community. He's been great, but I sure as hell wish he wasn't a candidate. Instead, I really want you to vote for senile crime bill Joe, Jim Crow Joe. I want you to vote for him, the one who made promises to the Black community and lied to your face and gave you nothing. How dare you try to even consume or think about the possibility of voting for Dr. West, someone who's been out there fighting with the people when the cameras were not around, by the way. Someone who's been consistent his entire career, who's really been fighting for the people. Don't you dare go out there and vote for that person. Go fight for the old white man. Go vote for the old white man who lied to you, who's a segregationist. Go vote for him. That's how dumbfounded these people sound. So people like Keisha Bottoms, putting them in office, they don't do us any justice. They don't do us any good. Don't come at me with, well, we do need representation. We need representation that's solid, that's based, and is not going to sell out the fucking people. That's the type of representation that we need. And if you come and you just got the skin color and you're not really trying to fight for the people, I'd rather you sit at home and we just not represented than to actually convince the American people, convince Black people that we got somebody in there fighting for us who is not. People like her. Now there's more. Because there is also this group called No Labels that is also considering running someone like a Joe Manchin. So in this conversation in CNN, and shout out to Case Study as well, they're bringing up both of them and why they're afraid that both of them could cause a problem for Joe Biden. As if Joe Biden is not supposed to have any type of challenge or is not supposed to have any types of problems. It's just supposed to be a cakewalk for senile Joe.
Is Joe Manchin considering a third-party run? I mean, the Democratic senator is not ruling it out as Manchin announces that he is going to New Hampshire for a No Labels conference. Listen to his explanation.
The most important thing is how do we help democracy do what it's supposed to do? How do we help the process, the political process that we have, do what it's supposed to do? That's to have common sense discussions to find out what the American people would like to see accomplished, not just basically the toxic atmosphere we have because of political parties. That's what I think about.
So are you ruling out a third-party bid?
Well, I never ruled out anything or ruled in anything. This is just strictly a conference that we're having, common sense.
He's ruled in money. He's ruled in corporate money. He's always ruled in that. He makes a lot of money in the coal industry. He doesn't mention that part.
Back with Chris Wallace right at the buzzer there. Chris, what do you make of this consideration? I mean, David Axelrod recently warned that a third-party candidate could very well hurt President Biden's chances for re-election.
Well,
See, again, the way they frame it, it could hurt Biden in re-election. Re-election is not promised to you. You don't get it just because you're there. You got to earn re-election. And this is the problem. And again, who they got doing? They got the Black woman here doing it, okay? You see what they do? Now here comes Chris Wallace. Let's get his opinion, because now all of a sudden we actually appreciate people like Chris Wallace and Liz Cheney. Now all of a sudden we're not against them anymore.
The buzzer there. Chris, what do you make of this consideration? I mean, David Axelrod recently warned that a third-party candidate could very well hurt President Biden's chances for re-election.
Well, in the last segment, we were talking about Ronna McDaniel not giving a yes or no answer. We didn't get one from Joe Manchin either. Look, a third-party candidacy, and he's talking about doing it on the no labels banner, potentially. You've got Cornell West talking about doing it in the Green Party. Remember, back in 2020, Joe Biden won some of these key swing states. I think it was Georgia by 11,000 votes, Arizona by 10,000 votes. If you get Joe Manchin on the ballot, if you get Cornel West on the ballot, and I think most people think that they would draw more votes from Biden than they would from Trump, then this is, it's a 3-person race, a 4-person race. This absolutely hurts Joe Biden and increases the chances for Donald Trump, if he's the Republican nominee, whoever the Republican nominee, of actually taking a lot of those swing states. So it's a very big.
Here they go again with this lie. I want to be very clear about this because people continue to get this wrong, and some of them are getting it wrong on purpose. The third party voters, if there aren't third party candidates, those people stay home. Those people, 2016, perfect example, the people who voted for Jill Stein, the people who voted for Gary Johnson. If those candidates weren't running and there weren't third party voters, those people would have stayed at home. Those people don't in turn say, I'm going to support and vote for Hillary Clinton, or I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. That's not how it works. So when they say, well, this definitely would, it's going to pull votes away from Joe Biden. No, if you are a Biden supporter, you're going to go and vote for Joe Biden. Come on, make this make sense, people. If you're a Cornel West supporter, you're supporting Cornel West. If you are RFK Jr. supporter, you're supporting RFK Jr. But you see how they spin it. They're like, this is dangerous. You guys are going to get Donald Trump. Let's do a little bit of the math. Because if you take all of Gary Johnson's votes and you give it to Donald Trump, and you take Jill Stein's votes and give it to Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump still wins. So I don't know what to tell. It's just, I don't know what to say here. So this is the thing. You're bringing up Georgia. Even if there wasn't a third party candidate, I'd be shocked if Joe Biden won Georgia again. I would be shocked. Have you talked to people in Georgia? That was a one-off. You have to remember, Georgia isn't blue. And for people saying, oh, Georgia is a swing state. No, I don't think so, bruh. I don't really think so. I think a lot of people came out. Stacey Abrams got non-voters registered to come out so that we would not keep Donald Trump. I think that's what aided in that. But that doesn't mean that's going to happen again. So let's stop. Just because this happened one time, that doesn't mean that Georgia is a swing state. Just keeping it real. But this is the narrative. This is how they're talking, you guys.
Of actually taking a lot of those swing states. So it's a very big deal. And if you're in the Biden White House, this has got to scare the heck out of you.
And to have the non-committal answer of it and not ruling anything out. If you're a strategist looking ahead, trying to figure out where to go from here, you want to nail down an answer so you can actually essentially do what you need to do to course correct if that's the case here.
If they were worried about course correction, they should have done that earlier. Yes, right? I don't think they thought that Joe Biden was going to be challenged. I think they thought that, well, no one's going to actually try to challenge Joe Biden right now. Now, Cornel West got a chance to respond about some of this criticism. He had an interview recently on CNN, and I want to take a look at that. Let's go through this. There's some interesting things that are mentioned here.
New reporting from CNN. The slow pace of President Biden's re-election campaign has caused some concern among some top Democrats and party donors. They were already a bit nervous because of the potential threat of a third-party candidate taking votes from Biden and potentially handing the election, they believe, to Donald Trump and therefore the keys to the White House for a second time. Joining me tonight is one of those third-party candidates, Dr. Cornel West. He is running for the Green Party's 2024 nomination. Good evening, Dr. West, and thank you for joining us here on The Source. What do you believe is your path to success?
Well, first, I just want to congratulate you on your show this week, and it's a blessing to be on your show. You're straight out of Plattsville, Alabama, the home of Wilson Pickett. So we got two 2 grand ones out of Platteville. But no, I don't talk so much about success in the narrow sense. I'm just trying to bear witness, Sister Caitlin. I'm trying to bear witness to the love and courage and integrity that Irene and Clifton and Shiloh Baptist Church Black Panther Party put into me when I was shaped to be able to tell the truth about poor and working people, because neither party wants to tell the truth about poor and working people. You keep track of these strikes, the Hollywood workers, keep track of the strikes of the Teamsters against UPS, keep track of the strikes in Amazon and see where both Democrats and Republicans come down. Keep track of the cluster bombs abroad. Keep track of the plight of Palestinians. Both Democrats and Republicans on one side, and then there's a few of us on the other doing what? Keeping alive the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, Dorothy Day, and a host of others. So I'm just trying to speak the truth and pursue justice. I wish they would spend as much time focusing on the plight of poor and working people as they do focusing on the spoiler. I don't even like that category, since so many of folk who vote third party don't vote at all. What was it, 61%, I think, for Sister Jill, said they would not vote at all if they didn't vote for her. So
I told you. What did I tell you? I told you. That's why, like, it was really important that he said that on CNN, because they're one of the networks that continues to say that lie, that these third party voters would have supported Hillary or would have supported, Donald Trump. That's actually not the case. And the thing is, too, that I thought he mentioned that was really important is that I wish people would spend more time focusing on the working class, like the workers, like the strikes and things that are happening right now, instead of calling Dr. West a spoiler candidate. And he's 100% correct. And they're not spending time focused on that because they don't really care about the working class. They never did, never will. They are corporate. They are corrupt. Who owns CNN? Who are the shareholders? BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street Corporation. That's who they talk to. That's who they answer to. And they continue to protect the status quo. But he's right. That was a good way to kind of flip it and put the ball back in Caitlin's court and be like, shouldn't you be focusing on what working class people need and want in this country right now?
I think the Democratic Party and the Republican parties, this corporate duopoly, they stand in the way of focusing on poor and working people, both here and abroad. And that's all I'm doing in this campaign. Part of a moment in a movement.
I'm glad you brought up Jill Stein, because the counter argument here. Jill Stein's actually helping you with this run. And 7 years ago, when she was the Green Party candidate, Hillary Clinton's world blamed her in part for that loss. And Democrats are worried you're going to play that role this time around. So what do you say to people, to Democrats who are worried you'll tip the election for Donald Trump?
I would say they don't understand basic math. I'm sorry, guys, but that would be my response. They don't understand math.
When I just say that, it's simply not true. I mean, I have great respect. I have great respect for my dear brother Ralph Nader. I have great respect for Sister Jill Stein. I have great respect for my dear brother Jammu Baraka. Meaning what? Meaning that the Democratic Party is so unsocratic as well as undemocratic. I'm still upset because they didn't treat my dear brother Bernie right twice. But they're unsocratic. Examine yourself. Examine why it is you did not speak to the issues of poor and working people, and therefore you're lost. If you'd rather lose than really change and examine yourself, then you're going to have third parties popping up all over the place because people are suffering out here. You got mass incarceration. You got ghettos and hoods and barrios and reservations. You got 60% of our fellow citizens barely making it every month. And what's the discourse? We want to win the next election and we're concerned about the spoiler. Hey, I thought you were concerned about public life. I thought you were concerned about the quality of the life of citizens. And I speak as a Christian, which is the least of these, the 25th chapter of Matthew, the orphans, the widow, the fatherless, the motherless, the marginalized, the subjugated. That's my legacy. That's the legacy that I attempt to enact in my own fallible way as a cracked vessel.
Yeah, so
let's jump in here for just a second, because I want to say something in reference to the Hillary Clinton blame Jill Stein. Hillary Clinton also blamed Bernie Sanders, even though Bernie Sanders helped her, went across this country to help her try to get elected. She blamed him too. She blamed everyone but herself. Hillary Clinton didn't act like she cared about working class people. She didn't even campaign in the Rust Belt, right? Come on. Even her husband knew to do that. How do you think Bill Clinton was able to win the Rust Belt? Wake up. So it was everyone's fault except for Hillary Clinton. The reason why, what Dr. West just said about the people are not happy. No, people are not. And you are going to see more and more third parties pop up because people are so tired and done with this stupid system where you pick from a freaking donkey or elephant. People are tired of it. People are tired of the status quo. And I want to make, just a difference here about Hillary and Jill, about Hill and Jill. Jill Stein ran outside of the duopoly. Grassroots. Hillary Clinton ran in it in a corporate campaign. Was not grassroots. Taking money from Goldman Sachs, taking money from Big Pharma. That's what Hillary Clinton was doing. She was never there to be for the people. She's corporate, she's owned. She was bought and paid for decades ago, okay? Before she even met Bill Clinton. Let's keep it real. So the thing is that if you constantly continue to look past the working class people, to look past poor people, keep pretending like you don't see them and that you don't need them, eventually what happens is that people will check out of your party, people will check out of your system, and you will not get them to come out and support you. That's why they're trying to really garner that Gen Z vote, because they realize a lot of us that are millennials, some of the people that are Gen X, we're done. We're done. So you can't tell us to come back out and support this stuff again. You can't tell us to go donate to the duopoly again. We've had it. That's why they're trying to go after the Gen Z population. Well, let's get our hands on them before they realize how poor they're going to be. Let's be real. Let's go back in.
You're saying essentially you think that Democrats, well, not just Democrats, but that they have the wrong message. If you're looking at this at the election, it comes down to the wire. You're polling at, say, 2 or 3% in key battleground states. What do you do? Do you ultimately back President Biden like you did in 2020? Or what would you do in that scenario, do you think?
Well, I mean, part of the challenge, my dear sister, is that, you got Trump. He's certainly a gangster, neo-fascist. He's, in many ways, promoting, if not promoting, that's too strong a word. But one effect of his work is to move toward a second civil war. With Biden, he's better in some ways on domestic issues, but he's leading us toward a third world war. So if we choose between the second civil war and the third world war, where are we? We're between a rock and a hard place. And that's where so many of us find ourselves, unable to really acknowledge the ways in which our system itself is just so toxic. The organized greed at the top, just hemorrhaging the best. The indifference, the levels of hatred and revenge. All I'm doing is saying is, hey, let us try another way that Fannie Lou Hamer already taught us, which is one of love and justice and community and solidarity with the least of these, and organizing and having strikes against organized greedy bosses, and then trying to somehow keep our democracy alive and dismantle the empire. See, I want to head the empire in order to dismantle it. We don't need 800 military units around the world. We don't need U.S. troops in over 100 countries. We need to be a nation among nations. We don't need to be the grand empire that every nation has to bow down to. I'm anti-empire, anti-imperialist in that sense, very much like Mark Twain and the most adorable American philosopher, William James.
I'm glad.
Let me jump in here for just a second about dismantling the empire. See, the status quo, the typical liberal, conservative as well, the corporate ones, they don't want a candidate that wants to dismantle the empire. They don't want anyone who's actually going to ruffle feathers. They want someone that can just slide in, sit in that chair in the Oval Office, and take direction and push from corporations and from the military industrial complex. They don't want someone who's going to try to change the system. They want someone who's going to work within the system. And anytime you try to be that person, to change the system, They're going to smear you. They're going to do everything they can towards you. And I'll give you an example. Bernie Sanders did not run third party. Bernie Sanders, who's a registered independent, did not run as an independent. Bernie Sanders ran in the Democratic Party, and they did this to him. Anytime you come forward and you start talking about, we need to get rid of billionaires, we need to dismantle this, we need to do those types of things, we need to hit big pharma, like those things, they don't consider you a part of the status quo. So you see, even the people who ran within the party were still smeared if they go against the status quo. Now, let me tell you why that's important. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. They want you to be a part of that status quo. If they were so concerned about the power going back in the hands of the Republican Party, just a couple of months ago, CNN and all these other little flunkies on this network were out there kissing Liz Cheney's ass. Let's all remember, okay? They were out there kissing up to Liz Cheney, and that was public, but it happens behind the doors too. They want status quo. They're not going to tell you that, but at the end of the day, they really don't care if it's a Republican or a Democrat, just as long as it's somebody who will come in there and keep things the same. Someone who's not going to try to push back against power, someone who's going to just nod their head and do what they are told. That's what they want. Someone who agrees with corporatism. Doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican. They would have rather had Donald Trump instead of Bernie Sanders. They don't want to tell you that, but that's the reality of the situation. The D and the R is just to keep us divided. That's to create division among us. So we won't come together in reference to a class movement because we're divided over a red team and a blue team. When it comes to DC, when it comes to Congress, when it comes to the military industrial complex, there's bipartisanship when it comes to corporate money. There's bipartisanship when it comes to war. There's bipartisanship when it comes to greed. Every now and then they'll throw in a few social issues to keep us divided. They'll throw in the abortion issue. Without that, they really got nothing. Let's just keep it real. But at the end of the day, they agree with status quo above everything else. Let's go on.
I'm glad you brought up NATO because you tweeted earlier this week that you believe NATO is what provoked Russia into invading Ukraine. As you know, that is the argument President Putin makes and one that the U.S. forcefully rejects. I know that you don't think the U.S. should be involved, but if you got elected, what would you accept in terms of a ceasefire in Ukraine?
Well, one, I've got my massive critiques of Putin, though. There's no doubt about it. But we're not talking about personalities here. We're talking about how the United States promised Gorbachev, towering statesman, that they would not move 1 inch toward Russia. And we end up right now 800 miles on the border of Russia. And we know.
Let's pause there for just a second because this is a very important point. Notice what she did there. She tried to say those are Putin talking points. That was a way to try to smear Dr. West. Dr. West pushed back on that by saying, let's get out of the personalities and let's talk about the history of what happened and why NATO is an issue now. You see, that's how you take control of the conversation and you swing it back in your direction. I don't know how long Caitlin's been doing this. I don't know if she is a seasoned commentator, but Caitlin really kind of froze. She don't know how to handle that type of opposition during an interview. See, he took power back in his own hands by taking the personality out of it. And I'm going to educate you, Caitlin, about the history. That's important. And that was smart.
How empires behave, Sister Caitlin. If Russia had missiles in Mexico and Canada, the United States government would probably blow them to smithereens because that's how empires behave. We had the same challenge in Cuba in 1962. So what we end up with a criminal invasion. And I know some of my left-wing comrades who know it's an invasion. Criminal invasion, but a criminal invasion provoked by the expansion of NATO, which is an instrument of U.S. global power. And we have to be able to conceive of a world when we look at China, when we look at Russia, when we look at Ethiopia, when we look at Haiti, when we look at Brazil, we got to see precious human beings rather than these competitive nation states that are trying to devour more profits, more land, and more territory. Can we conceive of such a world? Can we pursue such a world? I think we have to. What's at stake? The destruction of the species, the destruction of the planet, the destruction of democracies as we know it.
But
So we're cutting against the grain, but always with a smile.
Practically speaking, what would you accept in Ukraine? Like what? I mean, Trump claims he could fix it in 24 hours. What would that look like for you?
Notice the vocabulary, practically. Basically, this is her way of trying to tell you guys that, okay, well, if you're not in agreement with what the Biden administration is doing in reference to Ukraine, then what other idea you believe in your head is not practical? Let's go on.
Oh, what I would do, I would bring in the Chinese, the Turks, the African rulers. I would sit down with the Ukrainian leaders and say, we must stop this war, stop these war crimes, the cluster bombs on a variety of different parties, and make sure that we begin a diplomatic process for a just peace. And that just peace is going to have some serious concessions across the board. Russian troops have to leave. There's going to be debates over the territory. There's going to be some kind of concessions over the territory, but stop the killing. Why? Because the Ukrainian brothers and sisters are precious and they are bearing so much of the suffering with this proxy war between the American empire and the Russian Federation. So there's responsibility and blame across the board, but the American empire does bear a significant responsibility here, even though there's not the sole or exclusive responsibility, and it's in no way a pro-Putin. People say, oh, you must be siding with Putin. No, please. No, not at all. I'm trying to be morally consistent. I want to be a person that has some integrity and honesty and critique, self-critique and critique of others in a spirit of fallibility.
Okay.
I don't think CNN was expecting to get that, because nobody else is going to say it that way. Have integrity. He gave you the history breakdown of what happened there. He told you what he would do. I mean, what could she really push back on? So the thing is that, you know, again, I don't know if Caitlin's a seasoned commentator or what, or any other kind of thing. But the entire time during this interview, you notice she had this look on her face as though this is not something she was excited about, that she didn't really want to do it. Maybe that's just her face. I don't know. But what you have to understand is that the fact that Cornel West is running third party and he's getting this mainstream media attention just proves what we were saying before at RBN, that if you had a big name that ran third party, they would get mainstream media coverage. And he received mainstream media coverage the week that he announced. Some people don't even get that if they run it within the two-party system. So the thing is, that takes away that narrative that third-party candidates are not going to get any attention or any coverage. Take that away. It takes away the narrative that, well, people aren't going to be focused on the campaign because it's not getting attention. It's getting a lot of attention. They're talking about Cornel West almost every day. And that's what I think a lot of people, if you're not paying attention, case study be clipping these clips, cases clipping them. They're talking about him almost every day. They realize, holy shit, now there's someone who's running third party that a lot of people know. This actually could be a problem here. They're realizing this now. This could have happened if Jesse Ventura had ran in 2020. Times are changing and they need to change. I think Dr. West did a really great job. Let me make sure I finish this out here and I'll tell you what I think.
Okay, but you said serious concessions across the board. We'll have more questions on that next time we have you on. Dr. Cornel West, thank you for joining us here tonight.
What I want you to take away from this moment right now, we may never have this again. I don't know. So let's embrace. What I want you to take away from this is the fact that at the end of the day, it is not about Democrat or Republican. It's about status quo. And they want to protect that. And even Bernie Sanders at the end of the day was actually okay with that too. And that's why he endorsed Joe Biden. Not everybody is going to be brave enough to do what Dr. West is doing. Dr. West don't have to do this. But be real. Dr. West does not have to do this right now. He can retire, go sit on a beach and sip a Mai Tai. He don't have to be out there campaigning and doing interviews and running. He's doing so because he sees there's a need. Something has to change in this country. The narrative has to change. You start with the media first. Same thing with RFK Jr. I don't agree with him on this Israel-Palestine stuff. I don't agree with him on a couple other issues too. But same thing with him. He don't have to be doing this either. He really don't. He don't even need this. He also could be on an island somewhere sipping a Mai Tai. Maybe Dr. West and RFK Jr. could do this together. I don't know. All I'm saying is it takes a lot to come forward and to be able to make that sacrifice when you know you don't have to do it. That takes a lot. But they're all corporate. And the same liberals, by the way, in the Democratic Party who tell you you should not vote Republican, you should not vote third party, don't vote independent, and only vote for the Democratic Party, especially if you're African American, you need to be asking yourself, why the hell are you telling me what to do? Why are they fear-mongering you? Why are they trying to keep you trapped in the same system that keeps you where you are? And it's funny to me, they'll say things like, I care about, the plight of Black Americans. I care about equality. I care about Black people having financial success as well. But they keep you in a party full of politicians that prevent you from having that. They keep you in a party that keeps you exactly where you are and sometimes actually makes things a little bit worse for you if you want to keep it real. Nothing has changed. And this is why we need to talk about this. We talk about changes in reference to the African American community. If we keep doing the same stuff, what do you expect to happen? There is no change for us because we continue to support this party that has done nothing for us. Or some has even destroyed African American communities. I told you, Cop City, Atlanta, all Democrats running the damn city. So if they really care and really feel and believe that Black people should be elevated financially and should be able to have those gains as well, they wouldn't keep you in the status quo. If Fred Hampton and MLK and Malcolm X were alive today, some of those same people who like to quote them on CNN and MSNBC today, they would be smearing them the same way they smear people like Dr. West. Let's keep it real. They wouldn't be praising Fred Hampton. They would be warning you about Fred Hampton. They would tell you that Fred Hampton is a dangerous person. They would say he's fringe and chaotic. Those two words they like to use so much. Think about that. If Malcolm X were alive today, they'd say the same thing. These people would not be, yeah, Malcolm X is right. No, because he was talking about them. Fred Hampton was out here. If he was alive today, out here feeding and clothing people in his community, mainstream media would not be covering that shit. They would be covering the so-called militant side of the Black Panther Party that we were taught about in schools, and the mutual aid aspect was left out of the textbooks, okay? They would talk about that. They would exaggerate it, and they would smear Fred Hampton. They wouldn't tell you to support him or back him or applaud what he's doing. He was not status quo. And anything outside of that, that's what they do. And that's what I want you to understand. Now, those three people, MLK, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, they were not politicians, but they were against the status quo. Revolutionary leaders that they killed. And they killed them because they went against the status quo. Once the revolutionary leaders were gone, the Black community was swallowed up into neoliberalism in the Democratic Party. We were convinced that the way forward was going to be to vote blue. And we ain't see no revolutionary leaders come forward since. So they killed the revolutionary voice. They killed the leaders. They killed the movement. And they pushed us right in the status quo. I say, I think it's time to break away from the status quo. Time to leave, folks. It's time to leave. Thank you for the super chat, Dirt Star Master. Sabby 2024 US. I would never run for office. Thank you, Bryce. Joe looks like Krang from Ninja Turtle. Oh, no, Bryce. Joe looks like Krang from Ninja Turtles. That's rough. Thanks, Courtney. Is the White House or a retirement home? Neither. It's the nation's most popular crack house. Damn. Tamisha, Dr. Cornel West is a very smart man. I really think this is a wake-up call for many of us. Thank you, Susan. Loved your rant the other night. You rock. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, North Instead. So tired of the could take votes away from Biden argument. Many people had already decided they were not going to vote for Joe long before anyone else ever announced they were running. Yep. That was me. Thank you, Mysterio. Great show, Sabby. Informative and entertaining. Chef's kiss. Thank you, Mysterio. P. Wayne Smith. A handful of counties in Georgia are solid blue. The rest are solid red. But it's swinging all right. Thank you, Solomon. Thank you, Sabrina. Excellent job. Pop. Thank you, LPA Films. Detected no damn lies from Dr. West. I wonder how long will CNN allow him to talk freely before they start trying to really attack him. Well, CNN, I think, has new management now, too. So that's a whole, I don't know what they're trying to do over there now. Thank you, Blunts and Otters. When superdelegates stole states from Bernie, they said nothing. But when people voted third party, they absolutely lost it. Make it make sense. Thank you, Tamisha. I truly love and resonate with your position on politics, and you almost sound like MC Light, which I appreciate even more. You rock. Thank you so much, Tamisha. I remember MC Light. That's back in the day. Thank you for the super chat, DC. Why didn't West challenge her assertion that he backed Joe Biden in 2020? He did support Joe Biden in 2020. He said he came to terms. We talked about that when he came onto my show. He does say that he was wrong about Joe Biden, though. So in the end, he did say, well, we don't want Trump. So thank you, David. Cornel West needs to say both Biden and Trump are fascists, two sides of the same coin. Choosing between them makes no difference. Therefore, go West. That's true. I hear you, David. And thank you, Rob. I love this. There's a hybrid revolution slowly and quietly going on, and y'all are right in the middle of it. Peace. Thank you so much, Rob. And I think there's a comment on Rockfin. I can take that one. Thanks. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. I need to see the age breakdown of those Black men leaving. Are we leaving in terms of voting but staying registered Democrat? Are we leaving in terms of votes and registering GOP, or leaving voting Republican but registering Indy? Remember Mesha Maynor, I played for you last night, switched from Democrat to Republican. Black Dems told her, we give them hope, but they must stay where they are. Told her poor Blacks need us to decide for them. This is actually what they think and how they feel. They don't want us to think for ourselves. In order for parties to exist at the national level, they must exist at the state level. You have to break these parties up. The best way to do it is to run CBIs to amend state constitutions to make your existence of political parties unconstitutional in your state. This way, we break up the U.S. Senate with 34 independent senators and I think 180 independent members in Congress. More states needed allowing voters this option. That's a good point, Roger. And thank you for this super chat as well. Just like a test, I crammed to understand CNN. Thank you so much for that. All right, guys, that is it for me tonight. Thank you so much for hanging out. I hope you learned a little bit. I'm off on Saturdays. I'll be back on Sunday. So I hope you guys have a good night and keep up the fight.